There is a certain kind of silence that comes with grief. It lingers even after the world expects you to move on. He stood in it now, a gentle gray light filtering through the autumn air as he stared at a plain white envelope leaning against his front door. No stamp, no handwriting he recognized, just the word notice in thick, blocky print along the top. For a moment he let his hand rest on the doorknob, listening to the quiet, broken only by the distant hum of sprinklers. Inside the envelope, the letter was sharp and clinical. Homeowners Association violation. He already knew what this was about, but his eyes paused on the small photograph included. His tree, the one in the front yard, circled in red ink as if it were evidence of something vile. Tree must be removed within 14 days to comply with Yard Aesthetics Guideline 62A. The words were cold, the kind that sucked the warmth right out of you. He let the letter drift to the porch floor, unread on the backside. There, already stacked beneath the mailbox, were other envelopes, stark and uniform, reminders that someone in the neighborhood had decided he didn't belong. The pile had been growing for weeks, each envelope another nudge, another warning, another piece of someone else's will imposed on his life. But this time, the silence was different. He didn't go back inside. Instead, he sank down on the porch step, head in his hands, feeling the bristle of cool air across his neck. His daughter's laughter seemed to echo somewhere distant, as if it blew in from underneath the maple leaves still green with early fall. The tree had been small then, a sapling planted in grief, roots curling into the earth where she would never run again. Behind him, the house was dark and unwelcoming. The smell of coffee he used to make for her lingered faintly. For 15 minutes, maybe more, he couldn't bring himself to move. But out on the grass, that tree stood strong and upright, branches stretching for sunlight. He hadn't realized how much of his heart he had buried right there beneath it, how much he needed that living memory, even if no one else did. Finally, the sharp click of a neighbor's heels on the path snapped him out of the stillness. She glanced at the letter on his steps, then looked away quickly, her own dog tugging her down the sidewalk, not waiting for a greeting. He wondered if she had ever noticed the little plaque by the tree, the weathered one with his daughter's name. But most of all, he wondered what he was supposed to do now. Rip out the only thing still anchoring him, just because someone behind a desk thought it looked out of place. 100 questions pressed at him, none of them with answers. He didn't even notice the way the sun crept higher, or how the red circle on the photo seemed to burn itself into his memory. At his feet, the pile of notices rustled in the wind. They weren't going away. If anything, the weight of them felt heavier than ever. He reached for the topmost envelope with shaky fingers, ready this time to see if there was anything human in its words. But tucked inside, there was nothing but rules, and he couldn't help wondering what would happen if he ignored them just this once. The next afternoon, he stood in the front yard with a weathered photograph trembling in his hand. The sky hung heavy and gray, the kind that made colors look like they were drained from the world. He pressed the photo, his daughter at 5, tangled hair, gap-toothed grin, against the sun-bleached bark, and taped it in place with careful hands. The tape crinkled, the picture fluttered slightly in the breeze. For a moment he touched her face. It felt like a promise. Then he took up a worn wooden board and painted the words "In Memory" in blocky white letters. The paint dripped. He set the sign at the tree's base, taking a long breath. It looked defiant, vulnerable, like a statement he couldn't take back now even if he wanted to. He watched from the window as dusk set in, the sign aglow under the porch light. The next morning, the mailbox was gone. In its place stood a sleek new box, cold and official, with a heavy lock screwed in tight. No key in his hand, no way to reach inside. His mail now a hostage. Someone was making decisions about his life in the name of order. He walked the neighborhood that evening, curiosity pricking at every step. On 3 homes, new cameras blinked red in the shadows, watching corners that had always been blind. He noticed whispers, curt glances behind closed curtains, voices that fell quiet as he passed. At the entrance to the community park, the HOA's bulletin board gleamed clean. Crisp sheets lined up in measured rows, right in the center. Violation watch list. And there was his address alone, the only entry that week, bolded, circled, as if to warn the whole world he was a danger to good taste. Something inside him twisted. Not just embarrassment, but a kind of rage, the sort that simmers before it ever boils over. What were they afraid of? A tree? The memory it carried? The street was empty as he headed back, footsteps muffled by the grass. Even the insects seemed to quiet when he passed. He lingered by the tree under the porch light, wondering how many more nights he'd get to see it, before someone decided he didn't deserve that goodbye. But hidden in the lines of the watch list, a new question pressed at him. Why him and why now? It was more than the tree, but he couldn't see the whole shape of it yet. Behind the closed doors and locked mailboxes, what else was brewing that night? And where would it end when the sun rose again? The envelope was thicker this time, edges crisp and shadowed by a warning red stamp. Importance. Immediate. He nearly tossed it without looking. But habit won, the same habit that kept him sorting, stacking, struggling for some sense of control. He sat at the kitchen table, sunlight slicing through the blinds, hands cold as he ripped the seal. Inside, a letter even more clinical than before. Daily fine accumulation, account delinquent $3,200. His breath stalled out, all those days, each one growing more expensive as punishment, printed beneath. Lawn noncompliance. No mention of the tree, the words tasted like dust. He rubbed his eyes and wondered, for the 1,000th time, if any of this made sense. He wasn't the only one with grass going brown, plants caught in the heat wave. But the numbers climbed, line after line, none of them kind. He needed air. On the curb, he caught sight of the HOA president out for his morning walk. The man's smile cut a sharp line across his face, too wide, too bright. He nodded, pausing only long enough to murmur, "Some people can't follow the rules. That's how a community falls apart." The words hung between them heavy. He felt their edge even after the man walked away. That afternoon, the water shut off. A neighbor's voice drifted over the fence, "Pipe failure, sorry, it'll be a few days." He could see the contractor's van parked 2 houses over. How many times had this happened lately, and to whom? He watched as another neighbor hammered in a brand new fence, a color and height that broke a dozen regulations. No notice, no scolding note, just a cheerful wave between them and the HOA president. Rules, it seemed, were for some, not all. That night he checked his account online. Another fine added, $150 for refusal to cooperate, whatever that meant. The tally just kept rising, every day a new wound. He lay awake, the dark pressing in tight, questions turning over and over. Why target just him? What did they want so badly? More than just a trimmed yard, more than a missing tree. And in the morning, what price would he find waiting in the mailbox he no longer owned? Rain spat against the windshield as he pulled into the cramped parking lot outside the law office. Inside, the air smelled of paper and ink. A sterile cold hung around the waiting room, and the secretary barely looked up as he sat shifting from side to side. The lawyer was young, her glasses perched halfway down her nose, eyes sharp above them. She listened as he explained, tree, fines, notices piling up. She hummed softly, flipping through the contracts and zoning documents he'd brought stuffed into a faded folder. When she looked up, brow furrowed, she tapped the contract's signature page. "This part doesn't make sense," she said. "No sign-off from the board, but you have a tax assessment from the same year." "That's not legal." Her pen slid over the lines, highlighting one confusing clause after another. Hope stirred, small and nervous. "So, what does it mean?" The lawyer shrugged. "It could mean nothing, or it could be big, but it's not right. Not how it's supposed to be." Emboldened, he stopped by the HOA office on his way home, requested access to the records. The clerk, a man with sharp teeth and a sharper tie, refused, voice polite and icy. "I'm afraid you're not authorized for that material." That night, long after the streetlights snapped on, his computer chimed. An anonymous email. "Look into L14 lot transfer." No greeting, nothing else. His heart sped up. Was someone inside trying to help? Or was this a trap? He printed aerial maps, spread them across the coffee table, tracing property lines with a finger. No matter how he measured, something about L14 didn't add up. Borders twisted, contracts overlapped. Someone somewhere had tried to hide something, but why right under his feet? Sleep was a memory. Questions piled up, headlights swept the walls. He huddled over blueprints and deeds until dawn, searching for a shape that refused to become clear. Out on the porch, the tree waited in the mist. Under its branches, what secrets was he standing on? The first note was wedged behind the front door, written in a shaky, looping hand. "We support you. This isn't right." No signature, just a single pressed flower between the folds. He read it twice, warmth blooming in his chest. Someone cared. By noon, 2 more notes appeared, one in his mailbox's side hinge, another taped to the bottom of the in-memory sign. "Stay strong." "You're not alone." The simplicity of it made his eyes sting. Even now, there was something worth fighting for, but hope was short-lived. That afternoon, he noticed their trash left uncollected, bins lined up but ignored by the city truck. The air prickled with tension, the message clear. Loyalty comes at a cost. Later, one of the note-writers received a citation for their fence, the same style that others had always used without a word. Retaliation was swift and silent. The HOA's next move was a mass email. Neighborhood standards must be respected. Misuse of neighborhood sympathy will be penalized. His name was never mentioned, but the meaning was sharp as glass, shining through every word. Determined but tired, he attended the next council meeting. The room was fluorescent and cold, folding chairs set in exact rows. There, near the front, was the president, partnered this time by a stranger in a sleek suit. He recognized the man's face, not from the neighborhood, but from an old permit office photo. Something in the meeting's tension told him the man's presence wasn't by accident. He watched the president's jaw tighten when he entered. All eyes seemed to slide sideways in his direction, whispers multiplying just out of reach. He settled into his chair, questions circling in his mind. Was help closer than he thought? Or was he just putting others at risk by standing up at all? Sometimes the biggest fight is figuring out who's truly on your side, and who's only watching to see if you fall. He startled awake, shadows flickering across his bedroom ceiling. Outside, the low rumble of a truck's engine vibrated through the windows. He crept to the front, heart thumping, and peered through the blinds. A flatbed tow truck, hazard lights pulsing, idled at the curb. Gloved hands worked quickly in the headlamp's harsh glare. In minutes, his sedan, a car he'd parked the same way for years, was rolling up onto the ramp, steel chains clanking. The driver hunched over paperwork, slipping a violation slip under the windshield before climbing in. Unregistered vehicle ordinance, the citation read. Never mind that his registration wasn't set to expire for another 3 months. The sound of the truck fading down the block was all he needed to know. This wasn't about rules. It was about pressure. By noon, a dumpster had appeared on his lawn, dropped by a crew with no explanation and no warning. The official paperwork tacked to its side was slick with fresh ink. Tree zone demolition begins Thursday. As if the matter was already decided. A bulldozer rumbled nearby, its outline menacing against the afternoon sky. The final blow arrived by mail, this time from his mortgage company. Notice of default, potential foreclosure, due to unresolved liens issued by neighborhood association. He felt his stomach drop, the ground buckling a little as he imagined the loss of not just the tree, but everything. The house, the memories, his daughter's room still untouched at the end of the hall. Alone in the house that night, he opened a battered storage box and pulled out old building plans. Yellowed and creased, they showed the original layout, lot lines marked in faded pencil, outlines of rooms that had never quite matched what was built. In the silence, a cold determination set in. No one was coming to help, not unless he found something they couldn't ignore. But what was buried in those plans and in the ground beneath them that the HOA feared so much? Blueprints, property maps, and aerial photos blanketed the living room floor. The highlighter in his hand trembled as he traced the original lot lines, comparing overlays, searching for the pattern everyone else seemed so desperate to hide. On his laptop, a digital scan of the L14 file flickered, pixels blurring where someone had clearly erased and redrawn a section. The deed transfer cropped up missing signatures, names that should have been there just gone, replaced by mismatched dates. The mess didn't look accidental. It looked deliberate. Paper trails emerged where there should have been clean paths, back taxes paid out of sequence, a sudden land transfer coinciding with the year he'd first planted the tree. Each string led back to the same group of names, the same signatures reappearing in all the worst places. A councilman finally agreed to meet the next day, voice low and urgent on the phone. "There's something wrong here. Bring everything." For the first time in weeks, he felt a surge of hope. Not a fix, but maybe a beginning. That night in a diner 2 towns over, he met with a whistleblower, the only one willing to risk talking face to face. The man wore a baseball cap pulled low, eyes darting to every window. Sliding a small USB flash drive across the table, he muttered, "You'll know what to do, but not here. Don't plug it in at home." When pressed, he clammed up, hands shaking. "It's all there, more than you think, but don't trust anyone, not yet." Panic gripped him as he left, knowing that with every new piece, the danger only grew. Someone out there was watching his every move, waiting for him to make just one wrong step. But what secrets could be worth this much risk, and what would happen if he made them public? In the darkness of early morning, his computer screen flared to life on its own, strange, flickering, then dead again. Panic prickled his skin. His inbox, freshly logged in moments ago, was suddenly empty. Personal files gone. Passwords reset. The tech jargon he barely understood now felt like a brick wall. Whatever was on that drive, somebody knew he was looking. His phone buzzed, then blanked out, shuddered, and restarted with only the factory greeting screen, photos of his daughter, contacts, every memory erased. The weight of isolation closed in, his home suddenly too big and too empty, filled with the ghosts of lost data. The councilman, who had sounded so eager before, canceled suddenly. No explanation, just a curt text. Every promise of help felt further away than ever. A neighbor's call. "Did you hear? The whistleblower's mailbox got ripped from the ground last night." It was no accident. The message was clear: stop digging or it gets worse. Shaky hands finally inserted the USB into a borrowed laptop at the library. Inside, folders named by date. 7 years of security videos, each beginning late at night and running to dawn. He clicked one at random. Footage of landscape trucks pulling up to vacant lots. The HOA president, sleeves rolled, arguing under harsh light with a man in a suit, the same man from the permit office photo. The men's argument crackled faintly through the audio. At the climax, a briefcase snicked open, stacks of cash winking under the street lamps. He sat stunned, the laptop's low battery warning blinking red. Who else knew about this? And what exactly had they paid for besides silence? The questions spiraled, and now he worried. How many enemies had he made by learning the truth? Sleep became impossible. The next morning, long before sunrise, he printed the grainiest frames from the videos. Cash passing hand to hand, secret meetings, trucks leaving tracks in the mud. He stuffed the images and a single line of explanation into sealed envelopes. By dawn, he'd left one in every mailbox on the street, his hands shaking with adrenaline and fear. That night, he brushed off his suit, knotted a tie his daughter once gave him, and marched into the monthly HOA meeting. The room was crowded, neighbors lined the walls, tension like static between every seat. His lawyer waited by the door, a boxy projector in her hand. As the meeting started, nerves hit. The projector, his primary plan, refused to turn on. The screen flickered, then went blank, blue error message pulsing. The HOA president seized the moment. "There's been enough disruption for one night. I move we adjourn." Voices rose. Frustration buzzed through the chairs. Then from the back row, a neighbor who'd remained silent until now stood up, voice trembling but strong. "Show us what you've got, please." The room fell dead silent, everyone turning to watch. Rushing, his lawyer queued up the only backup, an old phone with a low-res version of the video. The image blurred and grainy but unmistakable. The president, a grimace, a briefcase full of bills. No one breathed. The silence lingered, thick with shock and confusion. And as the meeting dissolved into noise, whispers spreading, he wondered, how deep would the fallout run now that the truth was spilling out, bit by undeniable bit? Days blurred together as public opinion shifted. Where once there had been glares, now neighbors nodded to him in the street. But nothing had truly changed yet. One morning, the mail finally returned, in a heavy white envelope with his name typed in bold. Inside, a legal complaint. Lawsuit for defamation filed by the HOA president personally. Accusations of slander, harassment, damages to personal and professional reputation. The words cut deeper after weeks of battle. How was he supposed to defend himself against someone with so much pull? The court date fell on a Thursday. As he sat at the defendant's table, his thoughts wandered to the tree, to his daughter, to the people who had risked everything to try to help. The judge called the session to order. Later that day, another neighbor called in a panic. "You need to see the video while you were in court." They sent him a grainy clip from a doorbell camera, masked workers, an unmarked pickup, chainsaw buzzing. His tree toppled, branches scattering. No ceremony, no warning. Afterwards, walking over the torn ground, he noticed something half buried where the roots had been. At first, he thought it was only a stone. Digging with trembling fingers, he pulled out a silver necklace tangled in dirt, initials stamped inside. RL 2009. It wasn't his daughter's, but when he showed the necklace to his lawyer, she went pale. Someone in the crowd had lost it, someone who might know exactly what happened under that tree years ago. Who was R.L., and what secret had they left behind? Tree War exposes HOA corruption, blared the headline sprawled across the morning edition of the local paper. His face was there, not smiling, just tired, sitting on the torn-up patch of yard. The article lay out details: the bulldozing of his daughter's memorial, the mounting fines, the illegal contracts and shadowy land deals. His fight had become everyone's business. Before noon, the petition was everywhere. Neighbors he'd rarely spoken to knocked on his door. "Sign it," they urged. "We've all had enough." 400 signatures surfaced in a single day, demanding a council investigation, the president's resignation, the return of every unjust fine. Someone sprayed the president's face on the public board, red slashes through the eyes. Retaliation ran through the block, shouts at meetings, muffled arguments behind closed doors. A second whistleblower, this one using a disposable account, sent a message to his inbox: "Dig deeper under the back patio." That cryptic hint gnawed at him until long after sunset. In the dark, armed with only a flashlight and a spade, he dug at the edge of the patio. The dirt gave way to something hard, cold concrete slab where there shouldn't be any. Chipping and scraping, he unearthed burnt wood, the warped remains of a metal sign, and at the bottom, something fused to the rubble. A half-melted badge, numbers scorched beyond recognition. He stared at the find, heart pounding. Why bury a badge under a patio? And what had really happened the year those permits vanished? The next morning, his phone rattled with a new alert. An investigator from the police was at the door before breakfast. The badge and singed wood, it turned out, weren't ordinary debris. The numbers on the badge, after hours of cleaning, were confirmed. They belonged to a permit inspector, reported missing in 2009. The official had vanished without a trace, a cold case that no one thought would heat up again. Within hours, word spread. The resignation letter from the HOA president arrived, posted to the courthouse door. "Irreconcilable differences with the community," he wrote. Nobody believed a word. The next council meeting was standing room only. A new whistleblower stepped up, her voice frail but unwavering. "They buried more than permits under that backyard. People knew and they kept quiet for years." Murmurs swept the crowd. Shock, anger, fear that there was more beneath the surface than anyone had guessed. Within 24 hours, police made 3 arrests. The president, the man in the suit, and the old groundskeeper who had signed for the truck that night, all were led away in cuffs. One neighbor, RL, he suddenly realized from the necklace, was gone. No word, no warning, house emptied overnight. And then a court transcript surfaced. Someone had falsified zoning from the very start. The house he'd poured his life into sat on land that, for a decade, had never legally belonged to anyone. So what did that mean for everything he had fought for? Was any of it really his, or his to lose? News broke fast. The judge's decision hit the HOA like a wrecking ball. All outstanding fines and penalties are hereby canceled. Association dissolved for cause. Zoning rights and land titles returned to homeowners immediately. For the first time in months, something like relief began to unfurl. Neighbors gathered on his lawn, not to protest, not to scold, but to help. Someone brought wildflowers, another a fresh box of donuts, an awkward apology on their lips. The stump of the tree, now a rough scar in the middle of freshly turned dirt, became something new. A local artist carved the trunk into a memorial sculpture. Small birds and children's names adorned the wood, his daughter's smile etched into every curve. The community, now free from old rules, voted to keep it there forever, a place to remember those lost and those brave enough to fight back. He sat beside the sculpture as dusk painted the sky in gold and violet. In his hand, another letter, this one unsigned, typed with a trembling hand. "What's under the other tree, the one near the lake, is yours too." But as he read it a third time, heart thudding, he realized something strange. He never planted any tree near the lake, not ever. The words left behind an unsettling weight, a final thread left untied. So what could be buried on that quiet lakeshore, and how many more secrets might his community still be hiding? If this story moved you, share it. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories where justice, courage, and community collide. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a moment where the little guy stands tall. We'll see you in the next one.